The Dark Truth of a Medical Avenger. 5 real UTI stories that will haunt you forever. The air was thick with an uneasy tension as the clock struck midnight. Shadows danced across the walls of the small-town clinic, a place where whispered stories of ghosts and curses mixed with the unmistakable scent of antiseptic. Nurses exchanged glances, their eyes wide with fear, as the rumor spread like wildfire. Patients were going missing. Those seeking treatment for the most delicate ailments, urinary tract infections innocent and commonplace, or so they thought, were disappearing, leaving only echoes of their cries for help, swallowed by the night. Their disappearance wasn't the only strange thing. Stories surfaced of bizarre reactions to common medications. One woman claimed that after her appointment, she could hear thoughts swirling around her, as if the medicine had unlocked some otherworldly connection. Another patient, eyes wide with terror, reported fleeting visions of the clinic as dark past the very walls seemingly dripping with the pain of every soul who had stumbled through its doors. It was as if the clinic was alive, breathing, and watching. Every time a new case was reported, an electric chill ran through the staff. Fear gripped their hearts when a doctor realized patients came in with similar symptoms, but left with frantic eyes and shadows behind them. "Has anyone checked the basement?" one nurse whispered, her voice shaking. A place no one dared to go. A cold shiver ran down each spine as they imagined dark corners holding secrets, even darkness itself, as the stories of a medical avenger took form. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Tension hung heavy in the air, and just as whispers grew louder, a loud crash broke the grim silence. Startled, everyone turned to see a figure standing in the hallway, bathed in fluorescent light, face obscured in shadow, clutching something tightly in their hand. "Help me!" the voice trembled, haunting and familiar. The sight sent shivers down every spine, for in that moment, it was clear something unspeakably sinister lurked within the walls of the clinic. Had the Avenger come for revenge or for help? What dark truth would be revealed next? The answers lay hidden, begging to be unearthed. The figure shivered in the harsh light, the tremors of their hand making the object within their grip jingle like a sinister bell. As the staff stood frozen, a sharp gasp erupted from the nurses, who suddenly recognized the shadows cloaking the person. It was Molly, a beloved patient who had visited the clinic just days ago. But now, her wide eyes gleamed with a terror that painted her soul in hues of despair. "Molly, what happened to you?" screamed Karen, the head nurse, breaking the silence. The question hung thick in the air, as heavy as the dread wrapping around their hearts. "Something is down there," Molly croaked, pointing a shaking finger toward the clinic's basement. "I saw things, horrible things. It's not safe. They took my friends." At those words, an icy wind seemed to sweep through the clinic. The whispers about the basement morphed into screams echoing in their minds, gnawing at the desperation for answers. A nurse, usually grounded and practical, couldn't contain her trembling. "What do you mean they took them? Who?" With a glazed expression, Molly began to sway, as if fighting against the invisible chains of terror. They said they were cleansing us. Cleaning the infection," she stammered, her voice breaking like glass. "But it wasn't just the UTI, it was us. We're the infection." The staff gasped collectively, dread creeping up their spines. Could it be true? What had started as an innocuous clinic for treating minor ailments had morphed into a twisted den of darkness. One nurse fought the encroaching wave of fear. "We need to get her out of here. Now. We have to get to the basement." With that, they moved as one, pushing past Molly, who seemed lost in a haunting trance. The clinic's walls loomed higher than ever, whispering sinister secrets as they approached the basement door, rusty and ominous. like a gaping mouth ready to swallow fragile hopes. Wait, Karen halted, pressing her forehead against the peeling door frame. What if it's too dangerous? What if after we open that door we never come back? Her voice quivered with the weight of those words. The air was thick with uncertainty, and her heart raced in her chest. It was a moment of stillness, broken only by the terrified breathing of her colleagues. But if we don't go down there, how many more lives will be lost? A fellow nurse insisted, her eyes fierce with determination. The debate sparked a fire in their hearts, a swirl of bravery mingled with dread. They held onto the flickering hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could save those who had gone missing. The decision lingered in the air like a charged wire ready to spark. Let us do it, Karen said finally, her voice steady and firm. Gripping the rusted handle, she felt a chill seep into her bones, as if the basement itself was exhaling. The door creaked open with a haunting groan, revealing the darkness that lay below, a blackness that pulsed with unnameable energy as they peered into the void. A low wail echoed up the stairs, an anguished cry laden with despair. The sound chilled them to their cores. It was a warning, a plea. The shadows roiled and twisted, and the nurses felt the weight of something ancient and malevolent bearing down on them. In that fragile moment, a choice lay before them. Retreat back to the safety of the clinic above, or plunge headfirst into the abyss where the truth awaited, hidden and hungry. But before they could decide, a loud thud echoed from within the darkness. Something was coming. And suddenly, the basement door slammed shut behind them, locking them in. What awaited them in the shadows? What would be unmasked in the abyss? The darkness swallowed them whole, a thick, suffocating fog that pressed down on their shoulders like a heavy shroud. Karen's pulse hammered in her ears as the echoes of the thud faded into a haunting silence. The air felt cold, each breath shallow and ragged. What was that? Whispered one nurse, her wide eyes darting around, searching for the source of the threat. I don't know. We need to stay close, Karen replied, trying to project calm despite her racing heart. The flashlight beams flickered as they switched them on, slicing through the inky blackness, revealing the concrete walls smeared with decades of dampness. A flicker of movement caught Karen's eye. Shadows danced at the edge of their light, and she felt a chill crawl up her spine. It was as if something was waiting, lurking just beyond their reach. Molly, tell us what you saw down here, Karen urged, turning back to the haunted figure. Molly's ashen face was awash with terror, her trembling hand grasping the pendant she brought from above, its soft chime punctuating the thick silence. They were conducting experiments, Molly murmured, her voice a ghostly whisper. I heard them talking about purging the infection. They thought we were the disease. They thought we needed to be cleansed. Cleansed. The word dripped from her lips like poison, leaving a bitter taste in the air. Karen exchanged glances with her colleagues, uncertainty churning in the pit of her stomach. What experiments? What do you mean? One of the nurses pressed, desperation rising in her voice. They used us. They would hold us down, inject us with something. Molly's words tumbled out jaggedly, as if each recollection ripped at her soul. Then they would disappear. I saw it happen to my friends. A heavy dread settled over Karen. She thought about the faces of patients lost in the clinic, the absence of those who had come looking for help, only to vanish without a trace. Enough! Shouted another nurse, breaking the trance. We need to get out. Now. But before they could react, the darkness shifted. An unnatural sound reverberated through the air. It resembled a gurgling, almost choking sound, as if the very walls were speaking in a mournful tone. Karen hushed the frantic whispers. Listen. In the silence that followed, a low growl emerged from the depths. The nurses stiffened, their hearts racing. The sound morphed, twisting into the anguished cries of their missing patients, echoing their names, their pleas for help reverberating off the cold concrete. Molly, help me! A scream pierced through the air, raw and charged with pain. Megan? Molly sprang forward, her eyes wide with recognition and fear. No, we have to help her. No, it's a trap, Karen shouted, her instincts roaring in protest. But Molly was already moving, propelled by fear and desperation. the pendant clanging wildly as she rushed into the dark. "Molly, wait!" Karen cried out, but it was too late. The darkness itself seemed to engulf her, swallowing her whole. Panic surged within the remaining nurses. "We can't just leave her," one of them argued, stepping closer to the abyss. "Are you crazy? We don't know what's down there." Just then, the air shimmered, and before their eyes, the shadows morphed, revealing a flicker of movement. Something slithered closer, dissolving from the gloom, a grotesque shape emerging like a nightmare. A figure, human but twisted, with hollow eyes and a contorted grin, stepped forward. It was a person, a reflection of those they once cared for, now transformed into something horrifyingly inhuman. "Cleansing time," it hissed, and the air filled with a chilling laughter that echoed in the darkness around them. Fear gripped Karen's chest like a vice. She could feel time slipping away as the figure lunged toward them. Run! But where? The darkness was closing in. They had no way forward, no escape. The very walls of the clinic had turned against them. Only one question remained. Who would survive the cleansing chaos? As chaos erupted behind her, Karen found herself face to face with the truth they had all feared, and with it, her final flicker of hope began to extinguish. What horrific revelations lay waiting just ahead? Who else had fallen victim to the basement's sinister grip? The growls echoed like a death knell, cutting through the panic. Karen felt the icy grip of fear tighten around her throat, choking any remaining resolve. "Go, just go!" she screamed at the others, her voice shattering the stillness like glass. The nurses stumbled backward, instinct kicking in. But as they turned, the twisted figure lunged from the shadows, a grotesque specter of the past. Its hollow eyes locked onto them with a dreadful hunger. Karen shoved aside her own terror and grabbed the arm of the nearest nurse, pulling her back just as the creature's jagged teeth snapped shut where they had just stood. "Did you see that? It's not human," gasped the nurse, her voice cracking. "We can't stop now. We have to move," Karen urged, their training eclipsed by primal instinct. She led the way, heart pounding like a drum as they darted deeper into the darkness. The flickering flashlight beams carved frantic paths through the gloom, but every shadow loomed larger than life, pulsating with menacing intent. "Molly!" Karen shouted, a part of her urging for hope, remembering the desperate dash into the abyss. "Molly, where are you?" But the only response was the chilling choir of despair, echoes bouncing around them, faint whispers of lost souls mingling with the hollow laughter that slipped through the darkness. A brief glimmer caught Karen's eye as they rounded a corner. It was Molly's pendant, lying abandoned on the cold floor, its soft chime silenced. Impulse flickered. Could they go back? No, another nurse exclaimed, grasping her arm. "We need to go. We'll be next." Fear erupted in Karen's chest, but her heart was heavy. She had to make a choice. They could leave without knowing what had happened to Molly, but could they live with that? Suddenly, the low growl rose again, reverberating off the walls, growing harsher. "There's no time," shouted the nurse. "They're coming." Karen darted forward, leading them into a narrow passageway that felt like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. The moment they stepped inside, the air darkened, thickening with a palpable sense of dread. "Where does this go?" someone gasped, eyes wide with panic. I don't know," Karen admitted, fear creeping into her voice. "But we have to trust it's better than whatever is behind us." They stumbled deeper, the walls damp and cold against their skin, the cries of the damned growing distant yet more haunting. Just as they dared to hope for a sliver of escape, the passage opened into a large, abandoned room. Old equipment lay scattered across the floor, covered in a layer of dust that had not been disturbed for years. Faded photographs hung crookedly on the walls, the faces of patients who once believed they would find healing but were captured forever in this nightmare. "What is this place?" Karen wondered aloud, but even as the words left her lips, a shiver ran down her spine. She had a sinking feeling. "They were testing something," one of the nurses murmured, moving closer to an old table marked with dark stains. "We need to leave now." Suddenly, their flashlight beams flickered again. Shadows seemed to crawl closer, the atmosphere thick and charged as if something alive was coming for them. Panic surged through the group. Through the chaos, a sound emerged, soft, sorrowful voices whispering from the walls. Names, familiar names drowned out in a symphony of despair. Karen, Molly, Megan, they called out from the darkness like echoes from beyond, a horrifying reminder of the cost of their misplaced trust. We have to find a way out, Karen urged, desperation surging. But even as she spoke, she felt it a chill glimmering in her mind. What if they'd bitten off more than they could chew? Were they just pawns in a game far bigger than they understood? As they turned, the walls shuddered, the grotesque figure materializing from the dark, mouth twisted into a wicked grin. Cleansing time, it whispered, advancing toward them once more, the laughter morphing into a cacophony that wrapped around them. Squeezing the breath from their lungs, with a howl of despair, they fled into the darkness. But no matter how fast they ran, the sense of something terrible closing in on them loomed larger. The floor trembled beneath their feet, and Karen's heart raced as an explosive noise shattered the air, drowning out the cries. What awaited them in this rapidly collapsing black void? Would they uncover the truth behind the experiments or become lost in the darkness forever? As they barreled down the corridor, the walls pressed in around them, each breath a fight against panic. Karen's mind spun like a wheel stuck in mud, wrestling with urgency and the haunting image of Molly's pendant. Her gut screamed at her to turn back, to at least make one desperate attempt to go back. Faster! Karen shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. The growl rose again, low and guttural, echoing from behind. Each thud of its heavy footfall sent vibrations through the floor, shaking their resolve. The other nurses pushed hard against the retreating darkness, but their legs felt like lead in quicksand. They stumbled to a stop, staring into the abyss before them. A flickering light emerged, casting shadows that danced violently. What is that? One nurse whispered, her wide eyes reflecting the bright spark. Maybe it's a way out, Karen proposed, though a tentative tremor rode her voice. But something tugged at the edges of her thoughts. Was it truly a beacon of hope or another trap? The thought froze her momentum for a heartbeat. Yet a second later, a piercing shriek split the air, forcing her to spring into action once more. They pressed forward, the light revealing an ancient door framed imperfectly with rusted iron. The whispering voices intensified, beckoning like sirens. Help us, Karen. We shouldn't tea. Another nurse yelled as the echoing wails clawed at their sanity. Maybe we can find Molly in there, she pleaded, heart racing with both terror and love. In that moment, the door creaked open, revealing a claustrophobic room drenched in shadows. Old charts and syringes scattered across a desk told a silent story of desperate experiments long forgotten. But it was the sound of dripping water that pulled them deeper into the room. Karen. This place feels wrong, said a nurse, her voice faltering as she felt the overwhelming chill of the room. Ignoring the warning that tugged at her gut, Karen moved to the nearest chart. The faded handwriting sent shivers of dread down her spine. These patients, she whispered, the details of their suffering washing over her like ice water. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, and simultaneous gasps filled the air as realization descended. They were trapped, surrounded by the ghosts of medical malpractice and the chilling fate of the lost souls. As they turned, the voice of the grotesque figure emerged again, deeper and closer. You shouldn't have come here, it hissed, malicious laughter spilling from its lips. The whispers multiplied, the previously sorrowful tones now twisted into a mocking refrain. Karen, Molly, run. Adrenaline flooded her system, and she rushed to the walls. We have to break out. They hurled themselves against the door, but it held fast. Each impact reverberated painfully in her chest. Then, through the disarray of horror, a flash of light flickered in the far corner. A console once used for monitoring now pulsed erratically. It's powering up, one nurse screamed, pointing at the mystery that could either mean salvation or destruction. Can we use it? Karen questioned, feeling the weight of panic again. Who cares? We have to try. The nurse screamed back, desperation fueling every word. They rushed toward it, hands trembling over buttons, lights blinking like warning signals. The incessant laugh morphed into a chorus of screams, piercing through the air thick with fear and despair. Do it! Do it now! As they pressed the button, the ground trembled violently underfoot, shaking the very foundation of the nightmare they stumbled into. The grotesque figure lurked, watching, waiting, a predator relishing in its prey's final moments. Was this the key to escaping their horrific reality, or the final act of a terrifying play? As the screens flickered, revealing faces of the past, Karen's breath caught, realizing what lay behind the curtain of shadows. What truth would the beams of light unveil? And could they face the horrific knowledge before it consumed them whole? The console burst to life, and with it came a surge of hope mixed with dread. The flickering lights illuminated faces twisted in agony, their eyes wide with pain and terror. Karen froze, her heart pounding in a cacophony of dread. "Molly?" she whispered, barely able to voice the name that echoed through her thoughts. The grotesque laughter slinked back into the shadows, making the air feel thick and suffocating. She threw her gaze across the room, searching for the other nurses, but their bewildered faces mirrored her own fear. "Please tell me I'm not seeing things." A voice slithered through the air, sultry and low. "Oh, but you are." The screens shifted, revealing a series of grainy videos, the footage of the very experiments that the abandoned charts had alluded to. Each clip played like a twisted diary of suffering. Patients, sedated yet still aware, tossed about on gurneys, suffocating under harsh lights, their bodies contorted in ways that shouldn't be possible. The images seared into her mind, igniting a sense of betrayal fueled by rage. "Where are the doctors?" one nurse stammered, as if she could somehow pull them from the ether. "Didn't anyone try to stop this?" "No one came to help," the voice echoed, ringing with a sickening satisfaction that reverberated off the cold concrete walls. Karen's eyes widened as she searched for the source, but only shadows danced back, taunting her. She steeled herself and pushed further towards the console. "What did you do to them? All those people? A mere alteration of life's delicate balance." The darkness hissed back. "You see pain as suffering, but I view it as evolution." The console pulsed under her fingers, and she instinctively knew she had to find a way to shut it all down. These are not just patients. They're people. Their lives mattered. Did they? Or were they simply a means to an end? The laughter turned into a guttural growl, shaking the very core of the room. As Karen punched buttons in a frenzy, the lights on the console dimmed and pulsed in rhythm with her racing heart. "We have to reverse it," she shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. "No, you can't escape," the voice shrilled, piercing through her thoughts. "Not until I'm finished with you." The room shuddered, and the temperature dropped. They were losing their grip on reality, swallowed by the dark intentions of this place. "Get out!" another nurse screamed, pounding on the door. But before they could muster any coherent plan, a crack echoed, louder than before. The door groaned, then bent alarmingly, as if something large and predatory sought to break through. The nurse who had been closest to Karen turned, face pale with terror. "It's coming!" With a rush of defiance, Karen made a bold decision. "We either fight back or die trapped in here." She flung herself at the console, desperate to decipher the buttons and symbols swirling in chaotic patterns. Each keystroke felt like a step deeper into hell. But then, with a thumbing pulse of courage, something clicked into place. She pressed a sequence that sent vibrations through her bones, mingling with the terror closing in around them. The screens flickered again, but this time they filled with a blinding white light. Illumination spilled over every corner, chasing the shadows. And with it came names, faces. The patients long forgotten, trapped in time. Maybe they can answer, Karen thought, just as the growling sound turned into a furious roar. It felt like an angry storm, closing in on their tiny refuge. "Well, what did you do?" the nurse shouted, her voice cracking with fear. I think I may have awakened something," Karen said, eyes wide as realization cascaded over her. What lay ahead became crystal clear, the path entwined with both perilous uncertainty and a flicker of hope. Would this feral wrath turn into salvation? Or lead them all into an even deeper abyss? The room erupted into a chaotic whirl of sound and light. An almost living force pulsed through the air, electrifying the very atmosphere around them. Karen's heart raced, each beat echoing the urgency that pressed down like a weight on her chest. The moment felt monumental, but within that brightness, something sinister lurked. The growl grew louder, reverberating against the walls. Shadows seemed to writhe and coil, morphing into grotesque shapes that merged with the light entities born from anguish and despair. It was as if the very essence of the patient's suffering had come alive, seeking vengeance or an escape. "Stay close," Karen shouted, though her voice trembled. The other nurses formed a tight cluster, eyes wide and fear etched into their features. Their shared terror felt like a tangible force, binding them together as they braced for impact. "Shut it down. We have to shut it down," one nurse screamed, her entire body vibrating with dread. But the console responded to Karen's every move, almost as if it had a mind of its own. As she pressed another sequence of buttons, the light overwhelmed them, and the screens began to flicker rapidly. The images distorted and elongated, revealing glimpses of patients who had once been vibrant and full of life. Their haunted eyes stared back, pleading for release, screaming silently through the chaotic noise. A new voice broke through the cacophony, sharp and chilling. "You've opened a Pandora's box, Karen. Do you think you can control it?" The realization crashed over her like a freight train. This system was more than just a machine. It was a conduit linking the living to the suffering. If she didn't act fast, they'd all be swept away in the wake of its wrath. The ground quaked beneath her, sending vibrations through her shivering legs. "We need to reverse the process. Now," she commanded, hands trembling as she swept through the array of buttons, each pulse of light responding to her frantic energy. "No one escapes unscathed," the darkness crooned, its voice dripping with sadistic glee. Karen fought to suppress the gnawing panic rising within her. Their only hope lay in turning this nightmare against itself. Suddenly, the monitors displayed a new set of feeds. Faces she recognized flashed before her friends, co-workers, and patients she'd tended to in the past. Each one a ghost of the choices made in error, each expression a message laden with silent accusations. Karen's stomach knotted as their eyes cried out for justice, not revenge. "Do you really think you can save them?" The voice mocked, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. "I don't have to save them," she replied, her voice steadying. "I just have to destroy this." Around her, the other nurses hesitated, but their horror was palpable, hovering just below the surface. "What if we don't know how?" one murmured, vulnerability spilling through her words. Karen's gaze cut through the haze of chaos. "Then we fight to find out." Fueled by desperation, she pounded the last sequence, the console vibrating violently beneath her hands. A flash erupted, bathing the room in radiant white light. It felt both liberating and suffocating, like hope fighting against despair. Faces shifted, their expressions morphing into something ethereal yet terrifying, swirling around her. Then, everything went silent. The energy in the room hung like a heavy fog, stifling any sense of clarity. Was it over? Had she succeeded? Or had she unleashed something far more monstrous? Emotions roared through her determination. Fear, anger. The screen flickered, settling on one final image. Molly, her friend's face twisted in terror, locked in an eternal scream as reality warped around her. "No, Molly!" Karen screamed, reaching forward as the shadows pulsed again. The darkness responded, coiling and swirling towards her, a living entity hungry for life. A deep, primal growl resonated as the air grew colder. As Karen stood on the edge of salvation and damnation, she wondered, what could be awakened, and at what price? In that instant, a chilling thought pierced through the chaos. Was this simply the beginning? The silence broke like a fragile glass, shards of fear slicing through the air as shadows lunged forward. Karen stumbled back, her heart hammering in her chest. The faces in the monitors morphed into grotesque visages, each one a mirror reflecting her darkest regrets. Molly's wide, terrified eyes seemed to pierce through her very soul, the scream frozen on her lips. "No! Get away from her!" Karen cried, a raw desperation spilling from her. It was as if the room breathed, inhaling her fear and exhaling a malevolent force. The growl intensified, echoing through the confines. A thick, dark mist began to swirl at her feet, rising like smoke to consume the light. Each nurse clutched their arms, their bodies trembling, eyes darting as though searching for an escape. They couldn't turn back now. The horror they had unleashed was inescapable. "Karen," one nurse shouted, a hint of panic creeping into her voice. "We need to get out of here. We can't leave this." Karen replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Not while Molly's trapped. We have to find a way to pull her out." Just then, the darkness lunged, a wave of chilling energy crashing over her, wrapping around her like a straitjacket. It constricted and pulsated, each beat of the throbbing mass an echo of pain and anguish. It was feeding off their fear, growing stronger, more insatiable with each heartbeat. "Concentrate," Karen urged the others. "We have to channel our energy, focus it into one combined thought: freedom. Release." The nurses seemed unsure, glancing at one another with wide, terrified eyes. The command hung in the air, but they were still unsure how to break free. "Do it for her," Karen shouted, desperation fueling her fervor. "Look at Molly. She needs us." With a renewed sense of purpose, the group steadied themselves, linking their thoughts and intent, a constellation against the encroaching dark. Karen felt a current flow through them, a collective resonance that beat in time with the rising horror. Suddenly, the darkness shrieked. It was a sound that clawed at their insides, a symphony of echoes that twisted hope into despair. Visions flooded the monitors. Lives lost, moments stolen away. Some were patients, others ghosts of decisions made too late. Each fed the shadows creeping toward them. "No more," Karen shouted, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "We want to be your pawns." She slammed her palms against the console, feeling the jolt of energy shoot through her. The machine quivered under her touch, and then everything exploded in a burst of color. Light and darkness roiled and fought like titans, and Karen could barely see through the chaos. She reached for the monitors, feeling the connections inside her ignite a spark of determination. "Come on, Molly," she whispered, her voice laced with desperation. Just as she felt the weight of despair heaving against her with every heartbeat, something shifted. The room brightened, and shadows ripped away. Molly's face flickered before Karen again. Only now it was intertwined with her own. They were connected, their essences merging as if she was right there beside her. "Karen," Molly's voice broke through, soft yet pleading. "You have to trust yourself. Break the cycle." Before Karen could process her words, a rapture of light erupted from the console. It washed over the dark mist, striking it like a lightning bolt. The shadows wailed, twisting and contorting before melting back into itself. "Hold on." Karen's resolve locked in with the light, pushing against the shadows that still clung to the air. The ground shook again, and one by one, the nurses joined her, hands reaching toward the light, hearts dedicated to hope. As they united in the fight, another blast of energy surged forward. For a brief moment, everything fell silent as they held their collective breath, awaiting the outcome of their struggle. The question lingered heavily in the crisp air: could they truly save her, or would they too be consumed by the darkness? It was then, in that fleeting moment of hope, that the shadows whispered back, low and menacing. "They don't know who they're truly dealing with." A pulse of panic surged through Karen, but before she could respond, the light flickered as new forms began to take shape in the corners of the room. The light flickered, revealing shapes that stepped out of the corners like terrible specters, forming figures that twisted and warped under the brightness. The air thickened, the smell of fear saturating everything. Karen's instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, but she couldn't. Not now. Not when Molly was still in peril. "Stay together," she urged, her voice trembling but resolute. The nurses around her nodded, their faces pale but determined. They backed closer, hands linked and energy weaving between them like an electric current. Their collective fear sharpened into a weapon. The figures took form, remnants of patience long gone, eyes clouded with sorrow. Their mouths moved, but no sound emerged. Only silent screams echoed in Karen's mind. She recognized one, the man from the ward who had died just hours before. His face twisted with pain and accusation, eyes darting around as if trapped between worlds. "Let them go," Karen shouted, stepping forward, fueled by unyielding fury. "You can't hold their souls hostage." The forms paused, their swirling darkness momentarily stilling, and for a second, Karen felt a glimmer of hope. But just as quickly, the whispers in the shadows grew louder, circling around her, cutting through her thoughts. "Foolish girl," hissed a voice that dripped with malice. "You think your light can overpower the shadows? They are not trapped. They are ours." The shadows surged forward, the cold mist diving toward her, clawing and grasping. The nurses gasped, their expressions shifting from courage to sheer panic. But Karen's heart raced not from fear, but from a profound need to fight. "Think of Molly," she yelled, compressing focused hope into her chest. "Think of everyone we've lost. Together we can cast them out." As if ignited by her words, the collective light brightened, soaring upward like flames licking at the darkness. The spectral figures lurched back, their agony culminating in a harrowing wail that reverberated through the room. They recoiled, and for every scream, Karen felt satisfaction surge within her. But the darkness was cunning. It wrapped around each nurse like a serpent, whispering doubts, sowing distrust. "You're not strong enough. You're not worthy." You sentenced them to this fate. Karen clutched her head, her thoughts swirling with doubt. "No, I won't believe you," she roared, her voice shaking the very air. "We have to believe in the good that lives in us." The dark mist hesitated again, and just like that, the nurses, every single one, focused their energy on her. They grasped tight, hope spilling into the space like sunlight bursting through the clouds. The shadows writhed, yet for each flicker of doubt they cast, light poured back with even more intensity. Karen thrust her hands forward, channeling every positive memory, every spark of joy she had ever felt, crushing the shadow with vibrant energy. The moment felt electric. But then, abruptly, the darkness shifted once more. An immense figure clawed its way from the shadows, towering and grotesque. It bore a face familiar yet twisted, its mouth curling into a smile that sent ice through the room. "You really shouldn't have come here, Karen," it taunted, the voice painfully reminiscent of a loved one lost. "No," Karen choked, a chill creeping down her spine. Suddenly, a surge of memories flooded her mind, happiness, laughter, and then the raw loss that had cut deeper than any knife. Was that what this thing was? A reflection of her grief? A shattering realization struck her like lightning. "You thrive on our pain," she gasped, staring into the eyes of the entity. "But we're stronger together." She refocused her energy, intertwining it with those around her, building a shield that pulsed with vitality. The darkness fought against it, claws scraping and screaming, but the light began to grow in strength, rising to envelop the figure whole. "Fight it. This is ours to reclaim," Karen commanded. Yet, just when it seemed victory was within their grasp, a new cacophony erupted. The machines in the room sputtered and shook, warning lights flashing in frantic distress. "Karen," a nurse yelled, scrambling backward. "It's breaking." Karen's heart leapt with fear, but she kept her gaze locked on the entity. "We can't let it win." Then the shadows convulsed violently, and with one final earth-shattering roar, they lunged towards them again, this time with a fury that could obliterate. On the monitors, Molly's face morphed into a twisted version that both haunted and beckoned. "Help me," it moaned. The struggle reached a fever pitch, the air crackling with energy, darkness dancing on the blades of light. "Together," Karen screamed, but doubts gnawed at her, claws of despair slicing through the unity they fought so hard to build. Could they really fight off what loomed, or was it all destined to end in darkness? The shadows swirled, hungry and relentless. They could feel the end coming. And then everything went black. The darkness fell like a curtain, heavy and suffocating. Silence wrapped around the room. A disorienting absence of sound that sent chills racing down every spine. Karen blinked, heart racing, lungs aching for air. But then, from the void, came a glimmer light seeping through, forcing the encroaching shadows to retreat. Suddenly, she found herself suspended in a brilliantly lit void, surrounded by flickering images of all the patients lost in the clinic's malevolence. As realization dawned, Karen gasped, shocked to find that she wasn't alone. The other nurses, their faces pale yet shining with newfound determination, stood beside her. They were alive not just in body, but connected by the same thread of resolve. "Molly!" Karen's voice erupted, her heart bursting with hope as another glimmer flickered to life. There she was, a spectral figure shimmering between light and dark, an embodiment of everything they fought for. "Karen!" Molly called, her voice echoing like a choir, full of resonance and urgency. "You have to break the cycle." Together, the resolve surged within them all, igniting a wave of fierce energy. The air shimmered, and the shadows writhed, their growls now mingled with whispers of despair. Karen looked around, locking eyes with her colleagues. They formed a circle, hands gripping tightly. Fear was still present, but it had transformed into something more, an unwavering commitment to save their friend and protect the lives of those who had been lost. "Focus!" Karen shouted into the haze, her voice breaking through the clamor of grief and despair surrounding them. "We have to channel our memories of them. The laughter, the lives, let us bring them back." The nurses nodded, their faces set in grim determination. As they closed their eyes, images poured forth: birthday parties, cozy chats during lunch breaks, patients sharing jokes on their worst days. Each memory was woven tightly into the collective fabric of hope, a lifeline that fought against the choking darkness. "Now," Karen commanded. They pushed their energies forward, a unified front of undiluted light that surged toward the gnarled and twisted shadows snapping at their heels. The shadows shrieked, contorting and bubbling as the light engulfed them, illuminating the room as everything erupted into dazzling brilliance. For a moment, everything seemed to hold still, frozen in a conflict between light and dark. The looming shadows howled, distorted faces morphing into recognizable figures flickering in torment. Faces of the patients they had tried to heal flashed before them, expressions of pain dissolving into relief and recognition. "I see you," Karen shouted, letting the emotions spill forth. "We remember you. You are not forgotten." The shadows trembled, the growths of darkness erupting in furious whips of energy. But the nurses pressed forward, holding tight to their memories as their hearts swelled with strength. One by one, familiar faces emerged, shimmering toward the collective light. "Help us," they echoed, voices blending into a single, powerful anthem of hope. The leaden laughter of the malevolent figure recoiled, transforming into growls laced with fury. Still, the nurses wouldn't relent. Molly surged forward, intertwined within the radiant light. "Release us," she cried, her voice echoing in the symphony of hope. "We will be free." With that command, the tension broke. The shadows screeched, overwhelmed, thrashing against the encroaching light. The room began to tremble violently. Walls vibrated with shattering energy. The air filled with a howling wind, and then everything exploded into a resounding silence. A blinding flash enveloped them, and for a moment, the world was pure light and peace. Then there was nothing, only silence. As the aftereffects cascaded away, colors returned until they stood in the familiar waiting room of the clinic, disheveled yet alive. Relief flooded through every nurse like a cleansing wave. We did it," one nurse stammered, disbelief painting her tone. "Molly!" Karen screamed, eyes darting around to find her friend. But much to her relief, there she stood, albeit still slightly translucent, yet radiant and grounded as she smiled wide and bright. "You saved us," Molly exclaimed, tears sparkling in her eyes. This is a new beginning. The nightmare is over." The clinic echoing with laughter and chatter of people once lost. Those who had slipped away now emerged from the shadows, free from the grip of despair. An air of welcome love wrapped around them. It would take time, healing and understanding, but they had turned back the tide of darkness. With arms wide, Karen drew in her co-workers, a colossal embrace of shared survival. Joy mixed with a touch of sorrow, but finally, hope breathed deep within all their hearts. And as she looked at Molly, she knew their fight against the shadows wasn't just about the past. It was also to forge a brighter future, one patient at a time. The bond between them had deepened immeasurably, and together they would ensure that no one else would face such darkness alone. As they stepped into the light of a new day, a sense of warm serenity washed over them. It was time to rebuild and recover, to ensure that the ghosts of the past would serve only as reminders to protect the living. One step at a time. And as the nurses resumed their duties, standing brave and resolute, they knew this was a new dawn, and they would never take healing for granted again. The past was a ghost, but their future was vibrantly alive. If you felt the pulse of this story from beginning to end, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on our next exclusive, spine-tingling narrative. It would mean the world to us. Smash that like button now. Your support helps fuel our creative fire and keep these thrilling tales alive. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. It adds life to our community. Lastly, share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to witness this closing chapter. Together, let us spread the glow of hope far and wide. Don't wait even one more second to share this experience.